Hey, online family. Pastor Andrew, the founding pastor of Assembly Church here. Welcome to our channel. I felt like the Lord was calling us to a season of worship, and so I thought I'd come to you this morning and just give a short devotion followed by a hymn that I've really found near and dear to my heart. This morning we're going to talk about the idea of change your perspective. Change your perspective. A great analogy for this is my children love space. Both of my girls adore space. We've got star projections in their rooms. My oldest even has a planetarium arrangement inside her room where she can switch out the planets and solar systems and things like that that also project onto the roof of her bedroom. And she's got her sister, her 4-year-old sister, hooked on it as well. So they both sleep with stars underneath their or above their heads. And recently, it started to pick up recently. I've noticed that whenever they see a plane in the air, and then they see the jet streams swing by, they look up and they say, "It's a rocket! It's a rocket!" And I remember doing that as a kid too, thinking that planes, jet streams look like rockets that were blasting off. And the reason why is because when we look up and we see a plane jet stream, we don't see it on the horizontal because we're so low. We see it as if it's vertical. So it literally looks like rocket ships are blasting off all around us. And it's all about perspective. It's about perspective. And I felt like God gave me this word for this morning, that we need to work on our perspective. How are we seeing things? Are we seeing things in the temporal? Are we seeing things in our circumstance? Are we seeing things governed by our present surrounding? Or are we seeing things the way that God sees things? And specifically, I want to look into Hebrews 12. The writer of Hebrews says this, that we're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. Let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is now seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Jesus endured the cross because he had a different perspective. He saw what the end was. He wasn't looking in the immediate. He wasn't looking at the present situation, his current surroundings, his stress over here, his anxiety that was over here, his fear that was over here. Of course, he had no fear because he was Jesus. But he was looking at things from an eternal perspective. He knew what his mission was. From the very beginning, he knew what his mission was. He was on his way to the cross for you and I because he had the right perspective, he had the right motivations, and he carried through with the right actions. And I feel like we could learn from that we need to learn that our perspective is not so confined, that if we allowed ourselves to broaden our perspective and to begin to question, how could God see this outside of my present circumstance, that we would realize that the Lord has deeper plans for us than we can see in the immediate. And that would bring us comfort. That would bring us cheer. That would bring us even joy. And that would bring us peace. And so that's my prayer for you today, that you would begin to change your perspective. Just like the writer of Hebrews says, that instead of looking at the race that we're in right now, that we would look to Jesus, to drive and run towards Jesus. That we would look beyond the stress of our job right now, and we would look to Jesus. That we would look beyond the stress and the anxiety caused by our children right now, and we would look to Jesus. That we would look beyond the frustration and maybe anger that we might have towards a loved one or maybe even our spouse. And rather we would look to Jesus. That we would lift our perspective beyond what's going on right now, and that we would look to Jesus. A song that I absolutely love is How Great Thou Art. And the reason that I love How Great Thou Art is because it is a song that causes us to change our perspective. We look beyond the immediate and we look towards the eternal in this song. And the result, according to the song, is that our soul screams out, "How great thou art! How great thou art!" This song was originally written in 1885. And it's a really cool story because it was written as a poem by a guy named Carl Gustaf Boberg in Sweden. but it was actually rewritten and embellished by a composer named Stuart Kine, who was also a Methodist missionary in the Ukraine. And what he's writing about when he wrote How Great Thou Art is a change that he saw in the lives of the men and women who had just come to know Christ in their lives. That as they began to develop a relationship with Jesus, that they began to see the sacrifice and embrace the sacrifice of the cross that Jesus bared for them, that it changed their lives and it caused their souls to erupt with joy and cry out, "My God, how great thou art." That when they pondered the cross and they pondered the sacrifice, it caused a shift in their mindset. That their mindset began to swing off of the immediate sacrifice, the immediate circumstance, and they began to see things from an eternal perspective, from a world perspective. So I would ask that you would join with me right now. Look up the words to How Great Thou Art. It's an amazing song. I'm going to attempt to do this right now. And hopefully a bird doesn't fly by or somebody fires up a lawnmower. It starts off like this. It says, "O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands hath made." Worship with me. "I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art!" And then in verse 2 it says, "And when I think that God his Son not sparing sent him to die, I scarce can take it in, that on that cross, my burden gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation and lead me home, what joy shall fill my heart? Then I shall bow with humble adoration, and then proclaim, "My God, how great thou art!" Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! Thank you for worshiping with me. My prayer is that today we would change our perspective, that we would see beyond the immediate circumstance, that we would lift our eyes towards Jesus. We would see things the way that God sees things. We would know that He has a plan, that it is fearful, that it is wonderful, that it involves us, and that it is a joy to be a part of it. Thank you for listening. I'll be praying for you. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Check out the rest of our videos. Hit subscribe. Notify your friends. I think we all need to worship a little more right now. And as always, for more influential and encouragement and inspiration, I'll see you next time. Bye.